What would you say if a cop smiled at your window and got you to give away your rights in under 10 seconds? Because that happens every single day. And most drivers talk themselves into searches, delays, and charges before the officer even asks directly. The worst part is, you usually think you're being polite when you're actually making the stop easier for them and harder for you. Hit subscribe right now because what I'm about to show you could keep your car from getting searched and your own words from being used against you. And like this video now so you can find these exact lines fast when you need them under real pressure. Today, you're going to learn the 8 manipulative tactics officers use to get you talking, keep you there longer, and make you say yes when you never had to. You're going to hear the exact phrases that shut those tactics down without yelling, fighting, or acting weird. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the same patterns show up again and again. A friendly opener, a fake casual question, a pause that feels harmless, a request that sounds optional but is built to get your consent. Here's the reality. The stop can turn on one sentence from you. Let me show you exactly how to stay calm, protect your rights, and avoid feeding the case against yourself. When you get pulled over, your brain wants one thing. End this fast. So you answer everything. You explain, you joke, you admit you were probably going a little fast. You say, sure, go ahead, because you think refusing makes you look guilty. Most people have no idea that the officer may already be trained to use your stress against you. You think you're helping yourself, but you may be handing over permission, extra time, and probable cause. Your job is not to win a debate. Your job is to give your license, registration, and proof of insurance when required, stay polite, and stop volunteering. If you remember that, you take away half their leverage before the stop even starts. The first 2 tactics usually happen in the first 30 seconds, and they look harmless. First, the officer acts friendly and asks a casual question like, "Do you know why I stopped you?" That question is not there to help you. It is there to get you to confess. If you say, "Yeah, I was speeding," you just gave them evidence from your own mouth. The second tactic is the guilt bait question. Have you had anything to drink tonight? You don't have anything illegal in the car, right? Where are you coming from? These sound small, but each one is fishing for a bad answer, a nervous answer, or a story they can later say did not match. Here's what you do instead. You stay respectful and short. You look at the officer and say this: "Officer, what is the reason for the stop?" That puts the burden back where it belongs. If the questions keep going beyond basic stop information, here's exactly what you say. "I choose to remain silent," word for word. Memorize that line. You're not being rude. You are being smart. And if you want it even softer, you can say, "I don't want to answer questions without a lawyer." Defense attorneys use this exact line in court because silence cannot be twisted the way rambling can. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I think I was going a little fast," or "I only had 2 beers." Then those words get written down and repeated back later. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, what is the reason for the stop?" And I choose to remain silent. Then the officer has less to work with, and you stop feeding the investigation. Watch what happens when you stop explaining. The whole tone changes. The officer has to do the stop based on what they already know, not on what you handed them. That matters because routine roadside questioning is different from a TV arrest scene. In Burkham v. McCarty, the Supreme Court said, normal traffic stop questions usually do not require Miranda warnings first. Plain English, do not wait for some magic speech about your rights before you protect them. Use them early. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. You give the required documents. You stay calm. But you do not help build the case. Former police officers have confirmed this works because the easiest stop for them is the one where you keep talking. The harder stop for them is the one where you say little and say it clean. Have you ever had an officer ask, "Do you know why I stopped you?" Drop a comment below and tell me if you'd answer that differently now. The next 2 tactics are where a simple stop turns into a search. The officer may smile and say, "You don't mind if I take a quick look, right?" Or they'll act like it's already normal. "Just pop the trunk for me. Mind if I check your bag?" If you've got nothing to hide, we're good. Listen closely because this is critical. They do not need a warrant if you give consent. Your yes does the work for them. And they know most people say yes because they're scared that no will make them look guilty. Here's the line you need burned into your brain. "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Say it exactly like that. Calm voice. No attitude. No extra speech. If they ask again, you repeat it. "I do not consent to any searches." That sentence matters because consent can wipe out your best defense later. This is 100% legal. You do not have to explain why. You do not have to argue. You do not have to make up a story. You simply do not consent. There's another trap inside this one. The officer may wait until the ticket is done and then suddenly act friendly again. "Hey, before you go, you mind if I look in the car?" Most drivers think the hard part is over, so they relax and say yes. That exact move is why Ohio versus Robinette matters. In plain English, the Supreme Court said, police do not have to tell you that you're free to go before asking for consent to search. Let that sink in. You may feel like the stop is ending, but the officer can still slide right into a consent request without giving you some clean warning first. That is why your line has to be automatic. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Sure, I've got nothing to hide." Then the search starts, and now every closed bag, jacket, and container becomes your problem. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Officer, I do not consent to any searches." Then the officer either needs real legal grounds or the search should not happen. Schneckloth vs. Bustamante is the big case behind this. The court said consent searches can be valid even if the person did not know they could refuse. Plain English, the law does not save you just because you were confused. You save you by saying no out loud. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection because once consent is in the record, your lawyer has a much steeper hill to climb. Watch what happens when you refuse clearly. A lot of fishing stops right there. The officer may not like it, but your rights are not there to make the officer comfortable. They are there to protect you when pressure starts rising. Now let's talk about one of the sneakiest tactics of all, delay. The officer gets your documents, runs them, maybe writes the warning, and then just keeps you there. Small talk, more questions. A second officer appears. A dog is on the way. This is where people freeze because they think they have to wait forever. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. Once the traffic mission is done, they do not get extra time just to go hunting for evidence unless they have a real legal reason. You need one simple question. You look at the officer and say this: "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Those exact words. Short, clean, calm. Let me show you exactly why this matters. If the answer is that you're free to go, you leave. If the answer is that you're being detained, then the officer is now taking ownership of that decision. That matters later. And if they dodge the question, ask it again. Am I being detained or am I free to leave? This is 100% legal. Bad way. Most drivers say, "I guess I can wait," or just stand there awkwardly while the stop keeps stretching. Then extra time turns into a dog sniff, more questioning, and sometimes a full search. Good way. Smart drivers say, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Then the officer has to either end the stop or justify keeping you there. Rodriguez v. United States is the case you need to know. The Supreme Court said, police cannot prolong a traffic stop beyond the time needed to handle the traffic reason just to do a dog sniff, unless they have separate reasonable suspicion. Plain English? They do not get bonus minutes to go on a fishing trip. Illinois versus Cabals also matters here. That case said a dog sniff can happen during a lawful stop, but Rodriguez says they cannot drag the stop out just to make the dog sniff happen. Timing is everything. If you say nothing and just wait, you may hand them the extra time they wanted. If you ask the right question, you force the stop back into legal lanes. Former police officers have confirmed this works because the question changes the whole feel of the encounter. It stops being casual and starts being accountable. 90% of drivers don't know that last line. If you're still here, you're ahead of almost everyone on the road. Drop a comment saying "I'm still here," because the next part is where officers use pressure, movement, and confusion to shake you loose. The next two tactics are built around control. First, the officer orders you out of the car. A lot of people think that order must be illegal, so they argue. Bad idea. In Pennsylvania versus Mims, the Supreme Court said officers can usually order a driver out during a lawful traffic stop. Plain English? If they tell you to step out, you step out. You do not win by resisting a lawful order on the roadside. You win by complying without volunteering anything else. So here's exactly what you say. "I will comply." That line helps you in two ways. First, it keeps you safe. Second, it makes clear that what happens next is not because you agreed to more. If they start using that moment to turn into a search, you add your protection line back in. "I do not consent to any searches." Calm, clear. The second tactic is identity pressure. An officer may act like you have to answer every personal question just because you were stopped. That is not always true. In some states and in some lawful stops, you may have to give your name. That comes from Hebel versus 6th Judicial District Court. But that case has limits. It does not mean you have to explain your whole night, tell where you were, list who you were with, or answer every fishing question. So if the officer pushes beyond what your state law clearly requires, here's your line. Am I legally required to answer that? If the question is about identification in a lawful stop and your state requires it, then you comply with that requirement. If not, you do not have to keep talking just because the pressure got louder. Bad way. Most drivers say, "Why are you making me get out?" and then start arguing or oversharing. Then the officer says you were uncooperative, nervous, evasive, or suspicious. Good way. Smart drivers say "I will comply," and am I legally required to answer that? Then you stay safe, stay calm, and stop guessing about what the law actually requires. This matters because officers sometimes use movement and confusion to create openings. You step out, your door stays open, they peek, they ask fast questions, you feel exposed, That is why short lines matter so much. Legal experts agree this is your strongest protection when stress is high, because you do not need a speech. You need 2 or 3 clean sentences you can actually remember when your heart is pounding. So let's put the legal map together in plain English. Berkheimer v. McCarty means you should not sit there waiting for Miranda during a normal traffic stop. Schneckloth v. Bustamante means if you say yes to a search, the court may treat that yes as valid even if you did not fully understand your rights. Ohio v. Robinette means police do not have to tell you that you're free to go before asking for consent to search. Rodriguez v. United States means they cannot stretch a completed traffic stop longer just to chase other crimes without a real legal reason. Pennsylvania v. Mims means you can be ordered out of the car during a lawful stop. Hebel means identification rules can apply in some lawful stops, but not every question becomes mandatory. Here's the reality. These cases all point to the same lesson for you. Be polite, comply with lawful basics, do not consent, do not guess, do not fill silence with words that hurt you. Now picture this. You're driving home at night. Lights flash behind you. You pull over safely. The officer walks up and says, "Do you know why I stopped you?" The wrong way starts fast. Now you laugh nervously and say, "Probably because I was speeding." Then he asks where you're coming from. You answer. He asks if you've been drinking. You say, "Just one." He takes your documents, comes back 10 minutes later, hands you a warning, then says, "You don't mind if I take a quick look, right?" You say, "Sure, go ahead. I've got nothing to hide." Then he keeps you there longer. Another officer shows up, a dog circles your car, and now your whole night is gone. Even if they find nothing, you just went through a search you did not have to allow. Now the right way. Same stop, same lights, same officer. He says, "Do you know why I stopped you?" You say, "Officer, what is the reason for the stop?" He asks where you're coming from. You hand over your documents and say, "I choose to remain silent." He asks if there's anything illegal in the car. You say, "I do not consent to any searches." He tells you to step out. You say, "I will comply." He keeps talking after the warning is done. You ask, "Am I being detained or am I free to leave?" Watch what happens. The stop suddenly gets smaller, cleaner, more controlled. If he truly has legal grounds, he'll say so. If he does not, your question forces the issue. You are no longer helping him blur the line between a traffic stop and a criminal investigation. You're making him choose one or the other. Next week, I'm revealing what to say when officers claim they smell weed and use that to push for a search. Subscribe right now so you don't miss it, because that one tactic gets people arrested every single day. So remember the core moves. First, do not confess just because the question sounds casual. Second, never give consent to a search just to seem cooperative. Third, once the traffic business is done, ask if you are being detained or free to leave. Fourth, comply with lawful orders like stepping out, but do not let pressure trick you into answering everything. You do not need a speech. You need a few short lines you can say under stress. That is your power. That is your protection. And once you know these tactics, the stop gets a lot less one-sided. Hit subscribe so you catch that next video on the weed, smell claim, and phone search tricks. Smash the like button if this script just gave you words you can actually use when pressure hits. And drop a comment telling me which line you're going to remember first. Stay safe out there.